She worked in London for 2 years before moving to Zambia in 2000. She has been working in the coffee industry in Zambia for the last 12 years. Teija started as a coffee taster and in charge of quality control and roasting with Munali Coffee, and developed the Munali Coffee brand locally, getting Zambian coffee to the cafes, restaurants and hotels in Lusaka, the capital city, and around Zambia. She has also worked developing the international market for the Zambian coffee and the Munali brand. In 2008, she started roasting under her own brand, Marika's Coffee, now rebranded Peaberry Coffee Roasters Ltd. She has developed Peaberry Coffee Roasters to a solid local brand, not only roasting local coffee but also having a line of international locally roasted coffees and selling the coffee equipment, as well as doing maintenance and coffee training for her clients. Teija passed her Q grader exam in 2009, that is an international coffee quality assessment standard, and is certified as the World Barista Championship judge also in 2009. She chaired the Zambia Coffee Growers Association board between 2010 and 2014, and is currently vice chair of the board. She has been director of board of African Fine Coffee Association, the AFCA, since 2014. Teija has been working in Zambia with the Zambia Coffee Growers Association, developing the Zambia National Barista Championship since 2007, and has also chaired the Zambia Barista Committee for many years. She is a certified World Barista Championship judge, World Latte Art judge, and Coffee in Good Spirits judge, and has judged in the World Barista Championships since 2009. She is also a World Coffee Event representative and head judge. She has judged AFCA Test of Harvest competitions since 2005, and as head judge since 2012. I have a quote for our guests and our listeners, and it goes as follows. On Sundays, my coffee is recreational, as opposed to weekdays when it is medicinal. That's an anonymous quote. Teija, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We appreciate you taking time to share your journey with us and discuss your entrepreneurial and business journey in Zambia and Africa at large. Joined by my co-host Mwape Chisaka Jr. Good morning to you.
Super excited because today we talk about my idea drug of choice.
Well, Teija, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Let's start off. How did you get into the coffee industry, and what was that moment, that aha moment that made you a coffee taster?
Well, I was living at the Munali Coffee, and they had started planting the coffee already in '99. And by the time coffee starts producing, it takes about 2 to 3 years. And I went and did coffee tasting training just to see how it is. And that was my moment of like a aha moment. I was like, I just fell in love with the industry. I was like, the whole tasting and the fact that you can be a coffee taster and it's a profession just completely took me. And basically I'm still on that road.
Perhaps let us take you back. Coffee testing is a profession. What does it entail?
Well, basically we take the coffee in the farm when it goes through from the berry to the wet processing, dry processing. Eventually it becomes like a green bean, which is then sold and exported and used by roasteries. So the coffee tasters step in that point, and they roast samples of coffee, and they taste it, check the quality of it, and taste it and give a score to it. And we do it in the producing countries so that we can assess what quality the coffee is and how much it's worth. And then the buyers do the same process in their countries, and they also give it the price basically, and then we can discuss the value. If coffee would just be exported without knowing the quality, you would never get the correct price for it. So that's what the tasters do. They step in and assess the quality.
How do you know that this is good quality coffee?
Well, there's a few things we looked at. We create the green beans, so we check the quality of the green beans. They could be, for example, insect damages or things like that, which can affect the taste. But also when we roast it and we taste it, we look at things like acidity, the body, the flavor profile, sweetness, and all those things build up the final product, and you can kind of give it their score basically. And the specialty coffee would score over 80 points to 100 points, and anything under the 80 points is considered commercial coffee.
Okay. If I'm sitting here as a farmer, is there a better region of Zambia that is better suited to grow coffee than another?
Well, we have coffee still. Coffee growing in Zambia has unfortunately declined over the years, but we have coffee still in Masabuka. We got coffee in North. The area in North, close to Tanzanian border, is well known for the coffee, and the altitude, everything is good for the coffee. But Masabuka region has always also produced a very good quality coffee.
Okay. And what's your certain the quality of the coffee? How do you go about giving it a value? In terms of, especially if you're exporting.
Well, when we are exporting, we look at the Arabica coffee, what we grow in Zambia, is priced in the New York City market. So we take the New York City market, and then we can give it a premium according to the quality. So you can have the best Zambian coffees could, for example, get 60-70 cents over the New York City. So we look at it goes according to the international standards, their pricing as well. But that's why it's so important that we taste the coffee, so that we know how high quality it could be. I mean, sometimes when you have really high level lots, and they might be literally 5 bags of coffee, but you can get way higher price just because it's unique and it's way higher quality than the normal lots.
Does one know that when they're growing the coffee, do they know that this might be a high quality product?
They might have an idea, for example, in the farm, they might have a certain area which is always showing better quality. So they separate those lots, and they have to work on it, separating their smaller lots and tasting them separately to see if it's kind of working out. But there's a lot of stuff what goes into the quality of the coffee. It's from the wet processing going exactly correct. And the dry processing done correctly. It's like there's such a little details which go into that cup of coffee.
All right, amazing. Having gone for coffee tasting in about 99-2000, how popular was coffee then within Zambia and Africa compared to now?
Okay, it was nothing comparing to now, because then we had in Zambia, when I started, there was 2 coffee shops, and you could go to one of the hotels and have a cup of coffee basically. When you look at around Lusaka now, you see these coffee shops everywhere. You can have a cappuccino, you can have a latte, you can have the specialty coffees, and we have seen this trend around the world. When I started in coffee, we were exporting everything. Very little remained in the local consumption, and now the local consumption is building in all the producing countries. Brazil is a good example of where everything was exported, and now the local industry is taking a lot of the coffee because they really worked on building that industry locally, the consumption. And it's the last 10 years in the coffee industry has been a massive change. I mean, now we see Starbucks everywhere around the world. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of brands which are expanding, and their drinking coffee is trendy. And Asia particularly is pushing massively into the specialty coffee market. And Africa as well. I mean, we see all the countries are improving on the cafe side. The coffee culture is developing, and it's really fantastic to see.
It sounds like you're passionate about it.
I'm very passionate.
So what's the most exciting thing about being a coffee brewer in Zambia?
Well, I think it's been exciting to be able to be part of getting companies to use Zambian coffee instead of imported coffee. And people are sometimes amazed. They're like, oh, you do Zambian coffee, yeah. Local coffee. And I'm like, yeah. And then they taste it and they're like, oh, it's a really good quality coffee. And I think that's I see that every now and I see it often, but it's just keeps me excited, I suppose.
Amazing. 70% of the world consumes Arabica coffee, 30% Robusta. Which one do we consume here?
Zambia only grows Arabica. So that's the higher quality coffee. Arabica originates from Ethiopia. Robusta originates from Uganda. And Robusta is grown in lower altitudes, and it's a lower quality, and it's often used for blending in their a cheaper blends, but we only do Arabica here.
Amazing. You talked of high-end and low-end coffee.
Yeah.
Do people buy these?
There's a market for everything. It's amazing. It's some of the really low quality coffees will go to the instant coffee, for example, or there's blends. There's like Europe is a good example where you will find really cheap coffee and really expensive coffee, and there's a big differences between those because there's a market for everything. And some people just want to have a cup of coffee and they don't really think about what goes into it, and other people are interested to taste different countries, different estate. It's like becomes like a wine tasting almost. It's like you can have these different options inside coffee industry and coffee drinking.
Amazing.
Teija, we'll get back to the quality of the coffee. I wanted to take you back to something you raised earlier, the wet and dry processing. What is that? Can you break it down for us a bit?
So when you pick the coffee, we call it the cherry in that point because it's red. It's like a berry, red berry what we pick, and it's hand-picked in the farms. And it has to be taken to the wet factory within 6 hours. And what happens, they pulp the skin off the coffee berry, and then you have this like a mulch around the coffee beans, and that's being processed in the wet factory. So they do use different methods, but the most common one is putting the coffee beans in the fermentation tanks for about 12 to 24 hours, and that helps to loosen that mucilage around the bean, and then you run it through the washing channels to get that mucilage off, and you dry it. And once it's dried, it rests about 4 weeks in the bags, and then it goes to the dry processing factory where you now hull it. You take this dry skin from around the beans and you polish it and you divide it in different sizes, and now you will end up in there with, after dry processing, you end up in the green beans, and green beans is the one which is exported, or if it comes to my roastery and I roast it.
It sounds like a tedious process, or a process where you have to be very, pay close attention to what you're doing. Is it an industry? Is it a business that anyone can attempt without, thoroughly understanding it?
Well, you have to. I think to attempt to do it without having any knowledge would be difficult because you wouldn't know the processes, and you can make mistakes. Just by leaving in one single bean in that fermentation tank, and it going through to fermentation will end up affecting the taste of the cup of coffee. So you see, it's really exact. But I mean, all of these things Coffee Growers Association can advise on, so if anybody wants to learn how to make coffee, we have, you can get the information locally here.
Okay, and then coming back to the quality of coffee, you mentioned that we grow Arabica, and that's a higher grade.
Arabica is the high quality. Yeah.
Is it better? How did this happen? Is it a natural phenomenon that we have the higher grades? If you take it back in history.
Yeah, it's back in history.
Yeah.
It's going. I mean, coffee goes back 1,000 years. I think the first writings about coffee is from the year 800 or something like that. And Ethiopia and that area around Ethiopia is where Arabica coffee originates from. And under Arabica, you got different varieties. So what we have in Zambia originates to Arabica, but our seed lot originally in 1980s, when Zambia started growing coffee commercially, came from Kenya. So a lot of the varieties, the names we have like SL28, are saying that Kenya grows still as well. But now these days we produce our own seedlings here, but in Zambia. But the original lots did come through Kenya. So under Arabica, there's different kind of Arabica varieties, and same thing with the Robusta. You got different Robusta varieties, but it's the family of coffee plant, and Arabica and Robusta are part of that. There's a third one called Liberica, but it's not grown commercially at all. So all the coffee around the world, whether you go to Latin America, Africa, whatever, will fall under the Robusta Arabica.
Okay. And West Africa, for instance, is under?
Yeah, West Africa also, they got Arabica, they got Robusta, a lot of Robusta. They do, Liberia has got the Liberica, but it's just a small lots of it. It's not commercial.
All right, amazing. You told us that it takes 3 years for a coffee plant to grow. So how does a coffee berry become a coffee bean with brewing? How does it get from tree to cup?
So from the berry, you go through all those processing methods, the wet and dry, and then you get to the green bean. Green bean now we take to the roasting. So and that's what I do. And we take the coffee to the 200 degrees. We roast it about, my roasting equipment does about 15 minutes, 18 minutes, depending on what kind of roast we want, whether it's light roast or a little bit darker towards the espresso. And that's when you get from green bean, which is like really not aromatic at all, to this amazingly aromatic produce. And then we roast it, and after roasting let it cool, and then you can grind it and you can brew it basically, and that's when you can end up with a cup of coffee.
Amazing. And you said there's you can either have a light or a heavy.
Yes. Yeah, and it affects the taste. You know, you can, same bean can taste different according to how you roast it. So if you take a lighter roast, you will have like the flavors will be more stronger, you know, the aromatics in the bean, and the acidity tends to be a little bit sharper, you know, and more noticeable. And then when you roast it darker, you introduce more body and the heaviness for the coffee, and the flavors will be a little bit more muted.
That takes me to you said the flavors will be more muted when it's heavier.
Yeah, well, you get the heaviness, but you also, the aromas change a bit. So instead of, like, you might have like a bit of a dark chocolatey kind of bitterness coming through. And if you roast it all the way to the kind of oily, sort of covered darkness, eventually it becomes burned, and you will have that ashy taste in it. So, you know, there's like all these things what you can do with this coffee.
That's amazing. This world of coffee, you have me in all these places.
Did you have your cup?
I think I did. Too much of it. So now I'm light and heavy. So does that affect the caffeine that's in the coffee? Because I know for a lot of people it's a big thing. When you say coffee, they think, caffeine. Yes.
The caffeine, yes, it's affected by that, but it's not. People are usually surprised about this because now they think that the darker it's stronger, therefore more caffeine. But actually, in reality, the lighter roasts have got more caffeine because they're roasted less time. And then when you roast it longer, the caffeine starts burning off. It's not massive difference, but there is a difference. And also because the light roasts tend to be used for French press or drip coffees, they have more time to soak with the water. So more caffeine ends up in the cup of coffee. So comparing to the espresso, where you put the coffee under really high pressure, and it's really short and fast, and it's a smaller quantity. So really, in reality, your drip coffee, the filter coffee cup, has probably got more caffeine than you would get in your espresso.
Wow. Okay. I want to. You just lost. I lost my train of thought there. But I wanted to get back to the issue of brands. You mentioned in our introduction that when you started off in the coffee business, there were about two coffee shops or so, and now there's plenty. Why are we seeing this growing trend? Why are we seeing this? Why are Zambians or the Zambian populace finding it trendy to drink coffee? And why are we not seeing more international brands coming into Zambia?
Well, I think there's a lot of international brands kind of like coming in. You know, you see in the shelf on the shops with the coffee, and you know, I mean, there is like there's few of the South African brands who are quite strongly in the market now, but I mean, Starbucks has come to South Africa as well, so they are slowly but surely making their way to Africa as well. But I think it's partly to do with the fact that people travel a lot. They go to the countries where there's a strong coffee culture, like Italy or Europe. They sit in the cafe and have their cappuccino. Then they come back to Zambia, and now they want to have the same experience. And I think people are more enthusiastic to try new things. And instead of having their cup of tea at coffee or even instant coffee at home, they will go to the coffee shop and have their cappuccino and milk drink. They will have their meetings in the cafes, and it's becoming like a meeting point, a meeting place, instead of just being a place where you go and buy something and walk out.
As a person who's now growing Zambian coffee, do you find this interest of international brands, or infiltration of international brands, do you find this a problem?
I have got my very solid client base because what I do, I roast freshly locally. I got the local coffee, and I also provide the maintenance, that kind of things which support the training. And of course, the competition is always there. It always will be there, and there will be more of it. But you have to just be solid with your own business and the way you run your business, and so that you can compete against them.
Okay, taking you back to before perhaps you started Peaberry Coffee. How difficult was it to develop a brand such as Munali brand coffee on the international market? Coffee industry is massive. It's the second biggest commodity in the world, and when you go with a one single estate coffee into international market, it takes a lot of work to create that brand. And you have to be very sure that you give a right quality and everything. My father-in-law did a lot of work traveling in the conferences internationally. And eventually you will find the right people. You will network. You find people you can build a long-term relationships. And actually Zambian coffee is quite unique because there's so little of it at the moment, So, and in the market where people want to taste different things, they don't just want to have a blend of coffee. They want to have a Colombia, they want to have Ethiopia, they want to have a single estate. When you have a Zambian coffee, it's something unique and different. So marketing these days, a lot of work went into it in the initial years, but now it's like we don't have enough. I get emails asking for Zambian coffee, we just don't have enough to sell, for everybody who wants it. I want us to take a short break, Teija. When we come back, maybe we can talk about how we can improve the production of coffee in Zambia. We'll take a short break.
The Startup Hour, giving entrepreneurs education, motivation, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs from all corners of the country.
You say there's not enough coffee now.
Yes, in Zambia, the production is really low. It's slowly increasing, but we've had about, last 8 years that the industry has been down on the production, definitely.
What happened?
I think, the Zambia got into coffee growing quite heavily in the 2000s, and there was really great plans about it. But you have to have, coffee takes 2 to 3 years before you start producing. You have to have a very strong financial infrastructure behind you. And if you have the high interest rates, I think are part of the reason that, a lot of farmers could not cope with the growing coffee. Also, we had few years of drought. There was a lot of things which went wrong. So we had the routes to market the coffee, but the industry started slowly getting less and less. And so now we have more production coming up in the north. Northern Coffee Corporation's planting more, and they have promised to plant quite a bit more, up to 2,000 hectares, which is going to really affect local production. But it's been quite a lot of years that we've had very little production in Zambia.
So if I understand correctly, in the 2000s, did we have a lot of small-scale coffee growers at the time?
There was both small scale and the commercial farmers. So there was both happening at that time, and there was a lot of interest, and the Coffee Board of Zambia was putting effort in, and the Zambian Coffee Growers Association. But it just into the, and world coffee prices also dropped. They really dropped low, all-time low, around 2004, 2005, just when the Zambian production was starting to build up. Mm-hmm. And with all the other issues, the financial issues, the droughts, things like that, together with the world prices, also it was a really difficult time to grow coffee.
Okay. How do we now going forward? How are the prices now, if I can ask on one hand?
The prices are actually really strong at the moment. They are higher now than they were a year ago, and they've been quite high for the last 2 years or so. Mm-hmm.
So how do we encourage more coffee growers, both commercial and small scale, and then how do we mitigate some of the issues that arose in the past, high interest rates, and how do we go? Is there any way to get into drought resistant coffee plants, for instance? Yeah,
there's a lot of things around it. I think that the biggest thing is the financial infrastructure and having a low interest rate loans for the farmers, and that's something that the government can help and hopefully looks into, and being able to assist the farmers because it takes 2-3 years before the production starts. It's not like a few months and you have a produce and you can sell it. You have to wait quite a bit of time, so you do need to have their support on that side. There is different varieties you can use. You can make sure you got the irrigation system as well, for the periods of drought. And Zambia has got a lot of land, and a lot of it is very suitable for the coffee. So there is a future in it. It just has to be taught on how it can be done.
Is it something that one of the routes to go? Can we perhaps consider outgrower schemes or maybe community-based growing schemes?
Yes, I mean that's what happens. Most of the coffee in countries like Tanzania and Kenya is smallholder coffee, and it works really well for them. And that's something that we can look at in Zambia and see if that's we can look at what they are doing and maybe bring it here and start doing more of that, because there's definitely opportunities there.
Amazing. Speaking of growing the coffee industry in Zambia, how does one become a professional coffee taster? Because I'm sure someone was listening and they were just like me, like blown away, like, that's a profession?
Yes, it's not, you can't, it's one of those professions that nobody tells you at school. They all call that you can be a doctor or nurse or lawyer or whatever, but nobody says that, why don't you want to become a coffee taster? It's very much, most of the coffee tasters kind of end up doing it somehow. They end up to the lab where they do tasting and they get enthusiastic, and there's not really a school you can go to. You learn it through the experience, and you build the experience to the point that you can sit these international exams, which I did in 2009, and it's like a hardcore week of exams where you get tested on all the various parts on tasting and the quality control of the coffee. And it's quite a small pass rate. When I did it, I think we had 9 people sitting exams and 2 passed. That's the kind of exam it is. Everybody knows once you passed it, you definitely know your stuff, kind of thing. But it's really experience. You have to find somebody to train you, and that's how you learn it initially, and then you can go and do courses internationally and build it up. But it's a years of work.
I've just found a new career, Patrick.
You come and learn with me.
Yes. Then going into the Zambia Coffee Growers Association, you developed the Zambia National Barista Championship.
Yes.
First off, explain what a barista is, and then tell us about the championship.
Okay, so the barista is the person who prepares the coffee in the coffee shop. So he's the one who takes he or she is the one who takes the order, who prepares the coffee, and serves the coffee. And they are the specialists on the coffee they use, the equipment to being able to make all the specialty coffees, and that's the barista. And the barista competition now is like, when I started initially doing coffee roasting, we realized very quickly that we don't really know what to do with all this equipment, espresso machines and stuff. So a friend of mine offered to come and train us, and we did this first training in 2006. And he said to me, if you're serious about doing this training in Zambia, why don't you take part? Why don't you arrange this competition? And you can take the winner to the international competitions, and it will help to develop the coffee culture in the country. So that's what we did with the Coffee Growers Association's support. We organized the first barista competition and took the winner to Japan to the World Championships in 2007. And really, it's like a 15-minute competition. They have to serve 4 espressos, 4 milk beverages, which could be like a cappuccinos or lattes or any of those, and 4 signature beverages where they can take any ingredients, no alcohol, but any other ingredients, nothing illegal, no alcohol, and they can create their own drink basically. So and they serve 12 drinks in 15 minutes, but also they have to understand the coffee and tell the story about the coffee, where the coffee comes from, how it tastes like, what are the flavors like. So they need to showcase that they are the specialist in the coffee, and they can prepare the coffee professionally, they can serve the coffee professionally, they know about this coffee, and that's how you compete.
But what's funny is that you said no alcohol, but there's Irish coffee.
Oh yeah, but that's a different competition. That's the competition with the
You did mention Irish before that, right? but Tia, there I was sitting thinking I can open, and I'm sure many out there thinking there I can open a coffee shop and make a good profit and whatnot. But then you come with words like barista, equipment, coffee flavors, professionally. Maybe let's get to the core of this. What is it? What does it entail to have a proper, perhaps maybe that's the term I should use, a proper coffee shop? Because one would assume that if I set up a nice place that looks like a kitchen, I have waiters and waitresses moving around, I have my coffee making machine, and I've bought my coffee from supermarket X, I've got a coffee shop.
Yes, you have a coffee shop, but will you be able to provide the best possible tasting coffee and understand the process behind it? Is maybe not there. But I get customers coming in who kind of like go like, I really always wanted a coffee shop, I'm going to open a coffee shop. And then I help them and I introduce them to the world of coffee and I explain the equipment, what is the best equipment, what is like, I mean, there's different kinds of equipment. There's really highly specialized and there's like a little bit cheaper ones. And, there's all these things which goes into it. And I often end up advising people through their journey to open the coffee shop and explaining the importance of the equipment, the trained baristas, and we can train people as well. So I have done it very often where I get involved and I help them, basically. So if anybody out there wants to open a coffee shop, you can come and see me.
But perhaps what I was trying to suggest or ask was how do I, who's looking for good coffee, how do I know if I walk into a place, because as you say there's many places popping up now, how do I know that this is a proper coffee shop and the one I came from is not? Well, what differentiates the two?
Yes, I would walk to the barista and ask few questions. Ask questions like, where's the coffee from? Are they grinding it freshly? They should, proper coffee shops have a grinders. Yeah, and you ask a few questions about, and you usually get the feeling whether the baristas know something about their coffee. If they don't even know where the coffee beans come from, you kind of like go like, what's going on here? Why don't they? I always ask, wherever I go in the world, I always ask, where's your coffee from? Mm-hmm. When is it roasted? How fresh it is? Things like that, and then you have the specialty coffee drinks. If they just serve you coffee, but they don't have a menu with the espressos, cappuccinos, americanos, or and you can have a coffee shops which just do a drip coffee or Chemex or pour over. There's like various ways of making coffee, but they should know where the coffee comes from, and they should be able to explain you a little bit more about that coffee.
Wow, you lost me on the espressos and the cappuccinos and the americanos. All I know is
and the
coffee.
lattes.
I'm a coffee guy. Just instant coffee. What's this espresso you're talking of?
Okay, so espresso is like we usually use medium or darker roast coffee for the espresso, and it's made under 9 bar pressure. So you have an espresso machine where you pack this coffee into this portafilter, and the coffee shoots through with the pressure and creates this like a little drink, intensive drink with the crema on top. And espresso is the base. When you have an espresso machine, you start from the espresso, and the other drinks are built on that. So for cappuccino, you take an espresso, you foam the milk to around 70-degree temperature with the foam on the top, and you pour that on the top of the espresso, and that's how you create the cappuccino. And hopefully the barista will create a beautiful picture on the top, a little bit of latte art, just by the way they pour the milk over. Americano is espresso with the hot water, and then you have usually a milk served on the side. Latte, it's usually in Zambia served in a glass, and you have a shot of espresso, and then you have a milk which is not foamed thick. It's like a little bit thinner, the milk. You heat the milk and you pour it on the top, or you put the milk first and then espresso last, so you get those layers. And so espresso, you start from the espresso and then you can make all these other drinks.
Amazing. So here's Mwape. He's a certified Q taster. Now he's going for the big dog. He wants to be a judge, a barista judge. How does one become a judge?
Okay, that's a long journey. But you know what? I'm going to get you the judge this year. Because you know what I do in Zambia when we do the Zambian National Championships? Anybody who's enthusiastic or, works in the coffee industry or whatever can come and we can train you to do your first judging. And I'll train you to taste the coffee, and you will walk out of that competition never having you always, when you take your next cup of coffee, you're going to be thinking about it in completely different way. And once you have done like 2 years of national championships, you can go and sit the international certification for international judging. That takes quite a bit of study. You have to pass like a written exam, you have to pass a tasting exam, and once you pass the international certification, you can go and start judging in the international events, world championships. And you still have to sit through calibration in every single world championships, and every 2 years you have to recertify for judging. And then, like, I started judging 2009 in the world championships, and I've been head judging now 3 years. So it takes a lot of effort and time. You have to get the experience, you have to build that experience, but you can start this year, you know.
I think does that explain why there are only like 35 judges the world over?
Well, I think it's one of those things where you kind of decide, you look at something and you're like, this is what I want to do, and then you just adamantly stick into it. You know, you just continue doing it, continue building the experience until you get where you want to be. So yeah, we have about just over 30 head judges around the world. Every single national competition, you have to have a certified head judge in the event. So yeah, I'm the only one in Africa.
Okay.
But we are trying to get more people involved. So you know,
in terms of raising our profile as a country, what does the Zambia National Barista Championship do for us?
Well, we organize training sessions. So we do. When we go to the competition season, we always go in and train people. So we train a lot of young people who work in the restaurants and hotels and who show enthusiasm about making coffee. Mm-hmm. So we do training sessions. My company does training sessions anyway with our clients. Mm-hmm. But when we do the competitions, we go in, and like last year we had the former Dutch barista champion who came 9th in the world, and he came in to Zambia and did like a training in Lusaka and training in Livingstone. And we try to arrange these events before the national championships. And then when we go into national championships, the people can compete, these baristas can compete, and then the winner gets to go. We raise the funds so the winner can go to the world championships and compete. So our current champion is from Livingstone, from Munali Coffee, Brian Bamba. And he was in Ireland and Dublin last year competing in the World Championships. And then they get the experience of seeing what happens internationally, what the level is, and they can bring that experience back and work in the local industry and train the other baristas. But baristas tend to be always, it's a youth often who are involved, and you know, and I love the fact that the enthusiasm when it comes to competing and wanting to be better and improve your skills is so amazing. And every year when we do the championships, you can see that kind of vibe behind it.
Well, when the Zambian baristas do go on the international stage, do they go with our local coffee?
Yes, we use. I mean, they can choose the coffee they want.
Okay.
I mean, it's very much up to them. But usually, I always help them to choose, select the Zambian coffee, and we offer to roast it, do everything. And so far, everybody's wanted to use the local coffee because it is very unique to go into the World Championships with the Zambian coffee. You can be guaranteed that there's not going to be other competitor with that coffee.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of flavors, what kind of drinks would they offer? You know, when they go on the world stage.
So you know, they create their own like a kind of signature beverage as well as a part of the presentation, and we usually encourage them to use their local spices or you know create combinations with the like 1 year there was a drink one of the former winners did, and they made their milk out of the macadamia nuts right in the front of the judges there. Wow. And they used that as to make an iced coffee drink. So we always try to think about the local, something which is produced here, and then combine it with the Zambian coffee and make like an interesting taste experience.
Amazing. So coffee is a $500 million industry. By 2021, the industry is expected to reach $46.2 billion. It's the second most traded commodity, as you alluded to. So what part of all this wealth does Africa have?
Well, I see kind of like two things with this thing. First of all, there's still land where the coffee can be grown, which is not the same in a lot of other areas where coffee is grown. So we have got the potential of growing more because the consumption is increasing every year. So there's a potential of growing, but there's also a potential of consuming, which is growing enormously currently. So all the producing countries, which traditionally just exported the whole lot away, are now starting to have roasteries popping up and having more of a local industry instead of, it's crazy when you think about it. You produce this coffee, you export it overseas, then you import this coffee back, roast it somewhere else, and then import it to South Africa and eventually Zambia, and then you consume it here. That does really not make sense. So this consuming side is definitely building up, and that's definitely the trend and what's happening internationally. Consuming countries, the producing countries are consuming more.
And why do you think there is so much consumption for instant coffee versus better, higher grade coffee?
It's a lot to do with what people are used to drinking. So if instant coffee is what you've always had, and I'll give you the best cup in the world, you might not appreciate it because you're just not used to the different taste profile. But when you then think about it, a lot of these instant coffees, you take the packet of instant coffee and read what is in it. It's not necessarily all coffee. It can often have chicory, which is like a root, in it, because that's cheaper than coffee, and all the other ingredients which go in, the preservatives and all of that. When real cup of coffee, all we do is we take the green beans from the farm, we roast them, grind them, and serve it. There's nothing added in. It's all natural. So surely that's a healthier way of drinking coffee than drinking instant coffee.
Teija, we'll take a short break. When we come back, maybe we can talk more about the why we need to consume more coffee, and then we can zero in on Peaberry Coffee and what it takes to push the brand on an international market.
The Startup Hour, giving entrepreneurs education, motivation, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs from all corners of the country.
Teija, I wanted to ask you earlier, perhaps we should have thrown this to you in the preamble of the show. How did you go about setting up your own brand of coffee? Perhaps you can walk us through from the growing to the actual processing, the wet and drying processing, up to the coffee being found on the shelf.
Okay, yes. You basically start always from the coffee, and what coffee are you going to be using for your brand? And I've used over the years most of the coffee available in Zambia, because you see, I usually tend to taste the coffee and then decide how the blends work and what coffee I'm using for Marika's, which is the 100% Zambian blend. So when the coffee starts producing in the farm, and the farm obviously takes care of the picking and the wet and dry processing, but I'm usually kind of involved with the kind of processing methods and offering, because I like to use naturally processed coffees, which are, when you take the coffee berry and you dry it with the skin and everything. And it's a little bit more difficult to do, and I kind of can support the farmers in the quality control and how this coffee comes out, not just for me to buy that coffee, but for the international market as well. And so I kind of get involved in that point in the farm, where there, and I might visit and have a look at what's happening with the wet processing, with the dry processing, and then when the coffee is dry processed and it's now graded in the different sizes, that's when I start tasting it, and I start selecting what am I going to use for that coming year for my blends. And I got a taste profile what we've been doing with the Marikas over the years, so I know what I'm looking for, and I know kind of the quantities I need, and then I negotiate with the farmers before I buy the coffee, and set the blend for that year. And there might be a tiny bit of difference between the old crop and the new crop. I might have one or two customers who go oh, is it that time of the year again when they're coffee changes to the new lot, but usually the changes are really, really tiny. between the seasons. So then we take the coffee here to Lusaka. We roast it. Then you have got the whole thing of branding the coffee. I mean, when I initially started with Marika, the whole process of deciding on your packaging material, where to get your packaging material, because you can't get it locally, you have to import it. The designs for the packaging, the branding of the packaging, it's a whole process, and it takes a lot of thought to decide on the branding. And I've done it a few times with my businesses. And it's a really important part, because you want a product which stands out in the shelf, but it also has to be something that you can make locally. So I tend to import my packaging material from overseas. Some comes from Kenya and some from UK, just for the sake of the quality, because I'm really adamant that my produce will be same quality it would be anywhere else around the world. So I want it to be a really high quality. And so that process of branding, the packaging, all of that initially took a lot of time. I mean, now it's easier because we've been doing it for years already. And then the roasting, making sure your quality control is there, making sure you're roasting it perfectly to produce the nicest quality out of those beans, and grind it, pack it, and after that, the distribution to get the coffee where it should go, whether it's the hotels, the cafes, the supermarket shelf, before the coffee actually ends up in the shelf. It's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and it's quite hard to actually just even put it in a few words.
Right. I wanted to take you back to the part of the farmers. You mentioned you negotiate, you buy from the farmers. Does that mean that you don't actually grow your own coffee, or you use kind of like a outgrower scheme?
Yeah, well, I don't grow my own coffee anymore. I used to be involved with Munali, and I did. But now, these days, what I do, I work with the farmers, with the production side. So, I get it from different farms, 2 different farms at the moment, or sometimes 3. And I see what is available, and then I cup it and decide what I take, yeah.
Okay. With regards to packaging, is that an area, as you come in as one entity that's in the coffee business, and I'm sure maybe others will pop up, we hope that others will pop up. Is packaging something that Zambia can look at, perfectioning? Because you say you're importing from Kenya. You're importing your packaging from Kenya. So what are we not doing right in terms of manufacturing the right packaging?
Yeah, I think it's possible to manufacture the packaging, but because the industry is small, for the packaging companies to start doing the coffee packaging specifically, I think it's quite a process. And the industry for local roasting is really small. It's the same problem in Kenya, I found one company producing. In South Africa, there is 1 or 2, but it's like the business is just not big enough for that. And there is like a really international big companies who specialize on coffee packaging. So like the best packaging for me would come from Europe, but it's then you have 25% duty and all of that stuff, which you can avoid if you could buy something in Africa. And there's all these issues. Yeah, exactly. So there's all those issues what you have to consider. What kind of quality you want, where can you get it, is it worth the cost? When you go into it.
When you're actually roasting the coffee, what sort of equipment are you using? Obviously specialized equipment. Where do you do the actual roasting of the coffee beans?
I've got like a roasting plant here in Lusaka, and currently I'm roasting with the diesel roaster I bought in Zambia from one of the farms who stopped producing coffee initially. So I've had this roaster for 10 years. My brand new roaster, however, is in South Africa. It's on the way up. It's actually leaving today to Zambia, and it's coming from Germany. I ordered this like a retro style. It's a 1950s style, but like hand built in Germany roaster. So I'm gonna double the capacity with that roaster. And it's gonna be like a gas roaster. So that's arriving soon. And it's so exciting for me. I mean, other people want other things, but for me, this is, as a coffee person, this is like a dream roaster, basically.
It's a gas roaster.
It's a gas
so
roaster.
You're taking into consideration the load shedding and whatnot.
Well, kind of, gas is always a better way with the coffee roasting, in my personal opinion. So I'm going with the quality to the right direction. But yes, I have to say, with the power shortages and all of that, the gas seems like the best option at the moment.
All right. My final question. There's the World Barista Championship, right? For those of us upcoming baristas. Then there's the World Latte Art and the Coffee in Good Spirits Championship. So explain on the two.
Okay. So Latte Art is a competition where you literally pour milk in the espresso and create pictures. And it's called latte art. It's literally, you can make hearts, you can make leaves, you can make tulips, you can make elephants, you can make all of those things. And in the competition, you have something called free pouring. So you just use the espresso base and then you pour the milk. And then you can use etching, so you can take like a stick and use the dark and create kind of pictures like that. You can use powdered color, but there's like a different parts to the competition. So it's really like art. It's like the pictures, not the taste. And then Coffee in Good Spirits is it's a very exciting competition. I love judging it every year. It's actually a coffee and alcohol competition.
Yes.
So in the first round, what they have to do, they have to create two drinks. So you have a cold coffee drink and a hot coffee drink with the alcohol. And usually they have sponsored alcohols you have to use, and then you can add other things what you want on the top. So this is a competition where you're allowed to use alcohol, because in the normal barista competition you are not. And in the first round you do hot and cold drink, and then in the finals round you do Irish coffee, and then you can choose your hot or cold drink and serve that as a second option. And this is where we see these amazing Irish coffees with the whiskies from around the world, with the various ways of brewing coffee, so they can select their coffee, which country coffee comes from, how it's been brewed, so you don't have to use the espresso machine, you can use different brewing methods. And it's a really exciting competition, which I've judged finals 2 years ago. I judged the finals in the Coffee in Good Spirits, and they had like less time than in the barista competition, and he made a bottle of beer right in front of us, like a small bottle of beer with the butter, with the corking it and everything, and served it like this, and we pour it in the glass with the foam and everything. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing things that you see. What these baristas can come up with.
Wow. And a final question before we get to the Startup Hour Challenge. What are some of the barriers in your view, the barriers of entry for you who's already in the business? What are some of the challenges you're facing that you think maybe could help grow the industry?
Well, I think for every industry, anybody who is entrepreneurial and in Zambia running a business, I think the interest rates, I think, are very obvious issue. With their borrowing money is expensive, and so if we all try to kind of like plan around it and do other things, but it's difficult to grow business and start exporting overseas if you don't have funding to expand the business. I mean, there's things like, in importing and exporting, there's its own issues, which, I mean, expense of importing packaging material, what I was talking about earlier, is a big problem, because you import packaging here, you roast the coffee, then you want to now export this coffee. You're already more expensive because your expenses are higher because of the import duties on something that you want to now find a market to export somewhere else. So, there's things like that, which I think, could be easier. And I think would encourage the export if we had less costs on those.
Mm-hmm. Also, maybe if what about us maybe developing the consuming side of it?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Something we are working on constantly. It's like, they're trying to get people to drink local coffee, trying to get people to not to drink instant coffee and to move to local coffee and support the local industries. I think it goes with anything in this country. It's like, why are you supporting something imported if you can have something local, which is a good quality and great quality? It's and you have to hand in hand kind of build both. You build the local business and expand that, and in the same time you try to create export market and build that so that you can get that volume to increase, which basically we all have to do with our businesses.
Awesome. The Startup Hour Challenge.
Teija, we will have the Startup Hour Challenge. You're expected to answer without thinking. Just tell us the first answer that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's at the top of your bucket list?
Traveling.
Okay. Watch sports or play sports?
Play sports.
Last movie you watched?
Bridget Jones' Baby.
Okay. Have a night out or an evening in?
Night out, probably.
All right. Who inspires you?
Okay. I've met many people over my career who have given me kind of inspiration to where to go. Can't really name anybody particularly right now, but I have to say, I think strong women in the business industry, when you meet them and you like, yes, I can do that too. Maybe somebody like Bridget Carrington from Dormans in Kenya, who has worked in the coffee industry for a lot of years. She's a friend of mine, but she's like, there's people like that, you kind of look at and you're like, yes, I can do this too.
Nice. Read on a Kindle or paperback book?
I prefer paper, but I often read Kindle because it's faster to get the books.
If you could wake up tomorrow having gained one new ability, what would it be?
I would be a really fantastic accountant suddenly overnight.
What does friendship mean to you?
Very important. I always make sure I take time out and spend time with my friends.
Amazing. What's the worst advice you ever received?
That you can do something without understanding accounts.
Okay. Any dinner guest, living or dead, who would you invite?
Anybody.
Yeah. They could be alive.
Or dead?
Yeah.
Okay, I really have to think about it. I didn't expect this one.
Clock's ticking.
Clock's ticking, and I'm still thinking about it. Hillary Clinton at the moment, I think.
Okay.
I think I would like to ask you questions.
I'd like to find out. You and me both. What's your shower song?
Something bright and cheerful. And probably from Finland, actually, at the moment, because I just found Spotify and been listening Finnish songs.
All right. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Keep pushing. Make sure you got goals, and make sure you have like a short-term goals and long-term goals, and you make sure that you also achieve them and then set the new ones. It's make sure you always have something to aim to.
Amazing.
Tia, it's been a pleasure having you on the Startup Hour show today.
Thank you so much. It's been really, really good experience.
It has been indeed been informative, insightful session, all rolled into one. Be sure to catch us again next time, same day, as we bring you more influential business and thought leaders. Be inspired, and remember, the only person responsible for Zambia's development is you. So what are you doing about it?